It's been amazing for us at school as a team. Yeah, I had totally forgotten that was here. I just remember seeing stuff on Twitter and kind of hearing go back on our end. I can imagine.
Hi, so welcome back. Welcome back. I do want to let you know that there are some books for sale in the back of the room. Some of them are books that we have a social justice book club for grown-ups in Columbia. We also have a social justice book club for teens. We have one Columbia branch and two Charleston branches. I see you, Marlena. We have two Charleston branches, and so some of them are the books that this group has read, and then a few of them are books by some of our guests today. And so they're for sale back there if you want to grab one of those. So our next time together is going to be an emotional wellness workshop. This also came out of suggestions from last year, and I fully appreciate those. It's something that we all talk about, self-care, but who's really bad at that? I am really bad at self-care, so I met Napoleon about just a year and a half ago and fell in love with his energy and his spirit and his drive. He often speaks around the country, and very rarely, if ever, in South Carolina. Very rarely. And so let's do this work at home. He was born and raised in the Bronx and graduated from Binghamton University with a bachelor's in psychology and was inducted into the Binghamton McNair Scholars Program and worked as a research assistant to Dr. Joseph Morrissey, studying cross-racial face recognition. After graduating, Dr. Wells was accepted into the clinical psychology program at Fordham University as a PhD candidate. The focus of his research while there was the influence of religiosity on traumatic experiences, mood, and adjustment among subpopulations of African Americans. He graduated from Fordham's program in 2007. He's worked in the Veterans Affairs Hospital System as a trauma and anxiety disorder specialist. And are you still in Montgomery? No, you didn't send me your bio. So I looked it up. But he is now a faculty member at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And wonderful human being. So happy to have him here with us. Welcome, Dr. Napoleon Wells.
Good afternoon. So can you guys hear me clearly on this mic? Do I need to speak up?
Yes.
All right, can I just take this? I'll just grab the thing. Talking to it like so. And it's also give me the opportunity to move around a little bit, which I prefer to do when I'm presenting. As was stated, I don't have the opportunity to speak to folks in my own home now of South Carolina very much. Not that I have anything against working in South Carolina, just haven't been very many opportunities. The rest of the country is trying to catch up to doing some of the wellness work, and I think we're on board as well. Want to say I appreciate your time this morning. And as we're talking about wellness, I know some of you raised your hands when the question was asked about whether or not you do it well or poorly. The fact is, if you're doing the work that you are here for today, I would say it's better than average that you are doing wellness work for yourself poorly. One of the requirements for wellness is selfishness. It's a fact. One of the requirements for personal and emotional wellness is selfishness. Being able to identify and steal back time that is yours. Being willing to be self-focused enough to identify when you may be unwell or harmed or hurt or distracted and then attending to that. The work that you all do in advocacy and in equity is not going to leave you a lot of opportunities to do so. Part of that being our society's unhealthy relationship with work. You have a remarkably unhealthy relationship with work in the concept of productivity. In order for you to feel that you are doing your job well, you have to tell everyone else that you're busy, and then show them that you're busy, and then be burned out on your weekends, and take those couple of weeks of vacation to supposedly charge your battery where you're thinking about work, and possibly answering emails and taking calls and then returning to work that you aren't paid very well for. Beyond just that compensation is how you are managed emotionally by those who are around you. We should admit to and agree or not on several things. We should not approach our wellness in any safe way. And I would imagine in the work that you're doing, many of you are approaching your wellness in a safe way. You may say, you know what, I have that massage scheduled about 2 weeks out. I'm gonna go to this movie. I have this activity that interests me that I'm going to engage in. And all of those things are a part of wellness, but chief among the things that are gonna contribute to your wellness overall are how you view the tasks before you. And then how you view yourself within those tasks. What is the job that I have to do? Who do I advocate for? I've done a lot of wellness work with advocacy groups nationally, and it's interesting. One of the things that I find burns people out most is wanting to be a hero, but they're not really heroes. They're narcissists who think they're heroes, trying to do hero work. We gotta tell some truth today, y'all. Narcissism is not evil. You're human. Narcissism develops in the same way any other human trait does. You may not want to tell yourself that that's a part of what it is, but it's impacting you. For some of you, it's draining you. Superman saves a bus full of people. He flies it 3 miles from the place where it was on fire and sets it down. Bus full of poor people. They are 3 miles away from their home. He has not asked them once what they needed. You understand? Bus that isn't operational. This hero has saved their lives, certainly. But has he placed them in a precarious position? Sure. Part of what is likely draining you is your awareness that doing this hero work requires you at times to assume Superman's point of view. I just have to save people. I think I'm asking them how. I think I'm communicating with them. But most of them can't fly high enough to pull our cape, you understand? We are in spaces that they don't have access to. How many of those who we advocate for are present here with us today? How many are going to be allowed time on a microphone? No, we are flying high. We shouldn't be blamed for it because we have that ability. But a part of what we're going to discuss today is being essentially selfish. Had to come back around to it, right? How we think about ourselves. Selfishness is viewed as a toxic term because of conceptually how we've chosen to think about it. We think of selfish people as hoarding, as acquiring, as occupying space, as siphoning resources. But if you look at many of the most emotionally successful people, those who are remarkably unbothered by what the world thinks about them, they're selfish. I'm going to say what I think and process it with you. I'm going to do what affirms me, and you're allowed to feel how you feel about it. I'm going to pursue relationships that are important to me, regardless of what you may believe about them. It's not that they're disconnected, they just affirm themselves. And so we're going to talk about affirmation too, right? Okay. Let's get to it. So that's the title that I put up here, but we're not going to pay that any attention because we have work to do, correct? So putting the well self on the agenda. One thing I've observed about folks who do advocacy work is that you're big on agendas. You keep a list of things that have to be done for all of the people who you work for. The list, from everything I've been able to see, never gets much shorter. There are always items that are added to it, but never the self. Never the self. So the very first question I would ask any of you is, are you happy here as you are today? And there's a difference between being content and being happy. They feel, live, and function differently. If you are happy, would you give your existence to someone else who was in need of an identity? Would you give your existence to a person who was in anguish? Would you give your existence to someone who was falling? If not, you're not happy. You're not happy. You might be content. You might feel purposeful. But the question should be whether or not one can be happy. And that doesn't mean that you're happy in every instant. You understand? No one gets that. No one is allowed to feel that. We're all allowed to feel the full range of emotions. But as we're asking that question, we then turn our attention toward, what do we do about it? The very first thing that I would say to you is the same thing I say to many of my students when they tell me that they want to get an A in every class. Set goals. Step 2, set reasonable goals. There's a difference between those. There's a difference between those. I mentioned Superman, right? If Flash runs up to that burning bus, he better not be foolish enough to try to pick it up. That's not what Flash does. Flash should run in and get everyone out. Benefit of Flash is he probably wouldn't run them 3 miles away. You understand what I'm saying? But the idea there is to observe, who am I fundamentally and what would energize me? And that's going to vary based on the human who you are. Another question for you to ask yourself. How much of my work defines me? What's your answer? If you were to percentage it, what would you say?
More than I'd like to admit.
More than you'd like to admit, and I appreciate your honesty. You answered it in the same way nearly everybody would. There are some folks among us whose work consumes their sense of self fully. There's some among us here, right now. You attach your sense of wellness, well-being, overall worth to the work that you do. Let's go further. You attach your identity to what people say about the work that you do. And that's a dangerous place to be in. That's a remarkably and profoundly dangerous space to be in, right? Because you've then given this social space the power over determining what your actual human value is. Because we already agreed you attach your sense of self to your work. So imagine someone approaching you and saying, what is this advocacy for? Why equity? What does equity even mean? And I got that question recently. What's the difference between equity and equality? Had a nice big fight about that. But for some of us, you're aware of people looking at the work you do and devaluing it. And if you are directly attached to that work, they devalue you. Let's share this with each other, okay? I'm from New York City. I didn't start driving until I was about 19. If you will ask me, I will tell you everything that I believe and know about cars, right? I don't know shit about cars. I drive them. But if you will stand there and listen to me, I will tell you. However, if you will ask me about post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, teaching at an HBCU, all of those things, my opinion is rock solid. Google me. Google will tell you. In that instant, listen to what I say. Cars don't. A part of what we're going to have to do is to identify who's around here talking about cars and doesn't know anything. Certain instances, there are spaces and people in your life where you are going to have to cut the tether. The work that you do is human work. A part of you wants to connect to humans. It doesn't mean you devalue them. You simply put them in a proper light. This individual's opinion, I'm going to reduce it to a 2. Because that's all their opinion might be worth. As a human, they may be worth a 10 to you. But their opinion, reduce it. You're allowing, because of the good work you do and the good people you are, a looser filter. You want to know what society may think. You want to know what your communities may think. Some of y'all are here from Mississippi, right? Yeah. Georgia?
Yes.
South Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah. You are surrounded on all sides. There's no way to close that filter down. There's no way to completely dismiss all of the voices. But what you can do for yourself, as you're putting the self on the agenda in the work that you do, and we'll talk about it some. Let's make that percentage around our work just a little bit less. Let's make our own voice and our wellness a little bit more. And let's understand the voices that are before us, what their value is and is not. What is your breathing saying to you? Tremendously important question. It was one of the first things I would ask all of my patients when I was seeing them. And some would be confused by it. But we would start to talk about the meaning of the question. Our breathing is one of our body's first warning signs. Our breathing is. When we start to think anxious thoughts, our breathing starts to speed up. We go to sleep where we're supposed to be relaxing fully, our breathing starts to slow down. Our breathing immediately connects us to our state of mind. Thus the question, what is your breathing saying to you? If you are working every day, doing the difficult work that you do, and can't catch your breath, literally have instances where you can't catch your breath, what is your breathing saying to you? Yeah. Your breathing is trying to tell you in many ways, more ways than one, stop. That's what the catching up, stop. What are we doing that we are attempting to push through? What are we doing that we cannot relax enough to take a deep, clean pull of air in? And if we have enough time before I stop for questions, we'll do a deep breathing exercise. Because chances are some of you are breathing and nearly catching as we speak. As we speak. Thinking about the work that is waiting for you. Thinking about the people who need you. We're gonna practice, literally, slowing that breath down some. Have you allowed your most fully realized self to be a necessary component of your purpose? We shouldn't all look the same doing this work. We shouldn't all sound the same. We shouldn't be similarly stressed. Even in doing the same work, there should be a part of our human that plays a role. We should be demonstrating for those who we work for and those who we work with. You need to be here. You need to be present. If you are 100% your job, and we agree we take our work home with us, where's your human? Where's your human? Where's your connectedness? So we'll want to take a second there. Is your voice strongest, healthiest, and have you fed it good food? And by that, we should talk a little bit about affirmations, and we will. We should talk a little bit about the messages that we give to ourselves based on the things we do. We should talk about how we redefine failure, and how we redefine winning, and how we define purpose, and we will. So several allowances, and this is a critically important part of wellness work. What do I give to my human being? And that is how you should begin to think of yourself. I have a human being that is within me that needs to be fed, that needs to be nurtured, that needs to be valued, that needs to be spoken to, that I need to be in a relationship with every day. I need to fully embrace it, fully feed it, fully grow it. You are allowed to call you the hero to rest and to call you the human fourth to live and play. not just in small instances. I will go further. I will suggest to you that you need to call that human forth daily, just for a bit of time. I try to reset at the top of every hour, especially if my students are fucking up, right? I'm grading papers, and I'm starting to lose belief in my purpose and in my goal and the work that they do. And the work that you do is going to take it out of you. That work requires energy. You may not have the time to reset at the top of every hour, but you better reset at some point that day. This work is worth it, regardless of what happened today. I am worth the kindness that I am offering myself, regardless of how poorly I may have performed in my own eyes or in the eyes of others. What am I going to do for myself today? And it must be today, because a part of what happens when you absorb yourself in the work that you do, as much as it's possible for you to do, you realize you'll keep kicking that can down the road. Yeah, I'm gonna wait to relax for that vacation for Greece a year from now. A year from now. I'm gonna wait until I see my family a month from now. And what you're communicating to yourself is, again, that happiness we talked about, that fulfillment. It's not important today. It can wait. We're not feeding it, and it's alive, as we are. If something is a living being and we don't feed it, eventually, it dies. And we deserve better, correct? I know you do. You are allowed to examine your true reasons and motives. This is a hard one. This is a terribly hard one. Different value systems, completely different backgrounds. Surely that's some part of it. But on some level, you're still human. You want recognition too. If you deny yourself, literally just keep telling yourself, my human doesn't want that, and it's starving for it. Some of us want attention. Some of us want to be valued. You want to be promoted. You want coalition. You want to feel like a star doing the thing that you are doing. You want to be made to feel beautiful in the spaces where you feel you have ascended. These things aren't necessarily negative. You understand that? Even if you wouldn't admit them to yourself, I'm going to tell you they're present. Some of you would nod and just very minutely, I see you. And it is okay. It is okay. People function better when they understand their true motives, because then they know how to feed themselves. Part of why you may be starving emotionally, it isn't just that the societies and the spaces that you feed yourself into aren't feeding you back. They don't know what you need. And for some of you, you might feel if you were to tell them, it would make you seem small or petty. I'm going to ask each of you to do the following, especially those of you who are women and people of color. Fill every space you are in. Fill the whole goddamn place. Fill it. Let them get accustomed to feeling you right now. If you have a space where you know you are emotionally starving, drop it 10,000 tons in the spaces where you work and give yourselves to people, and do not be ashamed of that. A part of what is leaving you in a space where you feel neglected is that you have surgically removed parts of your human and left them home so you can go into work to do this work. Period. You've given them some version of yourself rated other than what you think they, whoever they is, can tolerate. Stop. It doesn't benefit you as you are starving and can't be fed because your mouth is closed. And it doesn't benefit them because they think you're full. But they, whoever they is, will literally allow you to keep starving so they will stay comfortable. Stop. Stop. Decide for yourself. If I'm going to be emotionally well, I'm going to have to live with my own emotions. The great ones and the small ones, yes? Emotions themselves are value free. None of us want to be seen to be selfish. Get over that. Decide to, in very small bits and instances, let people get accustomed to what it feels like for you to tell them no. Part of the reason why I haven't worked as much in South Carolina, it's the first time I'm going to admit this in a crowd in South Carolina. South Carolina doesn't want to pay the kid, you understand? Let's be clear. And all of you in this room know exactly what that's like. And if you continue to volunteer your time, you heard of the foot in the door phenomenon before? If you say yes to a small request, person will return with a slightly larger request. And then by the time they get up to their fourth request, and then you're prepared to say no, you experience guilt and they experience resentment. This is all practice, y'all. I've gotten accustomed to telling the state no, but I'm saying yes to good people. You can say yes, but say yes on your terms and when you choose to and in ways that are going to allow you to be filled. You understand? Y'all ain't going to get me in trouble today. Let's move on. You are allowed to disengage from the expectations of others while also valuing their place in your life. You can create a set of expectations with others that best serve you and your wellness and your happiness. And I will tell you what, make the choice every day to try and find out something different about yourself. When I was in graduate school, I was reading what I thought graduate students should read, you understand? I'm a clinical psychologist. There was a point I was reading Blood in My Eye by George Jackson while I was writing my dissertation. You understand? Reading that book or writing a dissertation. Had a younger member of my family say, nah, listen, get into science fiction. That shit ain't serious. No. Napoleon Wells, that's not what I read. Headed down to a bookstore, picked up a book, The Dresden Files. It's literally about a dude who's a professional wizard in Chicago. That's what it is. Started reading it, started to explore sci-fi more. Next thing I know, I'm at comic conventions. Next thing I know, I'm speaking at comic conventions. But here was a part of myself at that point I had not explored. There is so much more of you that is willing to be filled up by things you may not even think are for you, but are for you. You understand? Okay. I'll say very quickly and move because we don't have all day with each other. You are allowed limits and to let others carry their portion of the burden. When rising to your work, consider the following. You may be shouting in a voice other than your own and are thus exhausted. There is a typical version of those who do advocacy work. You know that, right? We know it when we see it. We understand how close we are to it. We understand how different a person is from it when we see it in someone else. What you should probably understand is that if you are assuming an identity that is not uniquely yours, you can't sustain that voice. It's not natural to you. Eventually and more quickly, you're going to run out of energy in trying to support that voice. Goes back to trying to find out ideally how complex you are, how much you're going to evolve. This work requires that we evolve. This work will force us to. Because we have to ask ourselves some hard questions. Are we doing the work that the people who we advocate for are asking us to do? Are we doing the job in the way that we see fit? If you're an expert long enough, you know what happens, right? I know, and I know what's best for you. And then you defer to people who are more senior who know and know what is best for all of us. Profoundly toxic space to be in. If you're going to continue this work, I'm going to ask that you often, and many of you already do, and you don't necessarily realize how critically important it is, return to the soil. Return to that root. Who are the people who feed the work that I do? And let me spend time with them. About a month and a half back, had an organization, Fatherhood Initiative of the Midlands, approached me to do a men's workshop in Sumter. Now, I had no idea what I was signing up for. I was like, listen, man, they're about to get Napoleon Wells, I'm about to approach him. I'm going to tell them these very dynamic things. They're going to be healed. I'm going to jump in the car, I'm going to race off, right? And I realized that the men's wellness workshops that I had been doing literally for the last 4 years were always in academic and professional spaces. And this was just in a community. So you know what was waiting for me when I walked in there, right? Man, you don't know shit about us. You're going to leave just like the rest of them. Then they started talking to me about their halcyon days. What I had to dial back into is, I'm from the South Bronx, man. I wasn't born Dr. Napoleon Wells. I know exactly what your life is like. I'm going to go back to that space. Everybody move forward. I'm going to walk down there with you. We're going to talk some shit with each other today, brother to brother, and let's try and get well. And when I dialed in, and this was in week 2 of 2. Week 1 was a disaster. In week 2 of 2 is when we started to have this family conversation. The folks who you work for, your family, wherever they are your root. Check in with them as much as is possible. That's where your voice will be strongest. Am I dedicated to all of the things I not only need to be, but want to be? And you may need to break for repairs as this work demands. As a society, we still don't want to do wellness work on an individual level. Some of you in this room right now are depressed and don't realize it. Or you realize it and don't want to tell anyone. You are experiencing generalized anxiety, sleep disturbance, disconnection from folks, hypervigilance, PTSD from the work you've done. But can't stop for repairs, won't stop for repairs, but you need to stop for repairs. I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm just going to speed up a little bit if you guys don't mind. I ask that you practice these the following daily. I'm going to make my way through them. Just want you to make note of them for yourselves. Practice essential selfishness once a day, meaning put an item on your agenda that is strictly for you, that doesn't require you to spend emotional energy on anyone else. It's completely self-focused. Doesn't matter if it's 15, 30 minutes. Put that item on your agenda and keep it there on a regular schedule. Do not move it. Do not budge it. Take perspective. Try and understand others in the relationships that you're in with them. We spend a lot of our emotional time on wishing others were to be different and do differently. Often they don't have the skill set. It's like Flash trying to pick the bus up and fly with it. If you got a Superman in your life, expect them to fly. If it's a Flash, don't expect them to fly. We have to take perspective to know that. Forgive yourself. It's a hard one for this group. I know it. You take losses hard. You call a lot of things losses that aren't losses. You blame yourself when you should blame systems, and that is tough. You blame yourself individually when you should blame a team of things and circumstances and context. So I'm going to ask you to forgive yourself for being unfair with yourself and ask you to be a little bit more fair. Look at the system and even take perspective with it where you are. Enter a space where you can be vulnerable and connected. We need a whole separate workshop for that one. We literally need about a half day to talk about how vulnerability, which within psychology and sociology we have come to learn is critically important in relationships as they have evolved. In the society we live in right now, social media, living further and further apart, even with our ability to get to each other sooner, has allowed people to create defenses that they did not know they had. Almost all of us are well defended, but it doesn't allow us to connect well to others. We need that connection. The only way we can fully connect is through vulnerability. Vulnerability and weakness are not the same thing. Be clear. Vulnerability and weakness are not the same thing. Vulnerability is a choice. I am going to accept in this moment that I willfully give this person access. In giving them access, I open this part of them. They can now do what they will. Are we going to be effective in every instant? No. No. But if we choose well, and that's why we need a half a day. Feed your interest systems. I had no idea prior to graduate school I was heavy into science fiction. Just didn't know it. Didn't know that I would be addicted to Star Wars. Didn't know it. Didn't know that I would, in fact, voice over in anime. Fact. Didn't know it. Had to, in fact, be exposed to these things. I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed films, I enjoyed debating, all things science fiction heads do a lot. If you have something that is an interest system, I'm going to ask that you invest yourself in not just engaging it, but expanding it. There may be a lot more there that I do in fact want, love, and need, if I take time for it. Your interests are part of what needs to be fed. We've talked about feeding ourselves generally emotionally. Your engagement in the things that make you human are important. Create and access personal affirmations. Be kind to the self and meditate. We won't have enough time in this moment to do a deep breathing exercise, but I promise you, if you are all back next year, I promise you I will make it back next year, and that is the first thing that we will do. Meditating on the self, meditating on the human, meditating on even instances where you feel hurt. I don't feel like my best self. Can I move into a space? Part of what we will do is to create, with regard to meditation, a place of power. I'm almost going to jump into it. I'm going to stop myself before I do. We'll see each other next year and do it, okay? My contact information is there. If you want to have these slides and continue the conversation, shoot me an email. And I'm going to make a bit of time for questions.
Who really needed that?
Let's do the breathing. Yeah, can we do the breathing?
So instead of questions, and if you have a question, you lost your chance. We're going to dive right into a deep breathing exercise. My voice is going to drop slightly as I lead you into this, okay? So we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to have a deep breathing exercise, and then we're going to move into an imagery as well. It's a part of what allows us to breathe without focusing too hard on it, okay?
Okay.
If you're comfortable doing so, I'm going to ask that you place your feet flat on the floor. Don't stomp the floor, folks. Just put your feet on. If you're comfortable in doing so, I'm going to ask that you put your hands in your lap. If that movement is too painful, just keep your hands in whatever way is most comfortable for you. Make sure you have nothing in your hands flat on your lap. First thing that we're going to focus on is our breathing. Take a deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. So that's what the exercise is going to incorporate with breathing. If you're comfortable now, close your eyes. Deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. Continue your breathing with that count. What we are doing is drawing clean air into our body, and we're breathing fully out. Moving any toxins, any weight, any burden we feel, out. Deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. I'll do one more, and then I'm going to let you carry your breathing yourself as we move into our next piece. Deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. Now, while you are inside of yourselves, while you are self-focused, while you are in a space that is fully you, I want you, with your eyes still closed, to take a brief look to your left while still inside of yourself. In that space where you've looked, I want for you to create a door. It can be any kind of door. What you should know about this door is you are the only one who can access what's on the other side of it. Others can only come into this space if you invite them in. Anything that you do not declare welcome will be removed through this door. Step forward through that door. Deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. In this space, your body has no weight. You can walk if you choose. You can float if you choose. You can be as air if you choose. In the space that we've moved into, let's set the temperature. Whatever one is best for you. If you want sun, you create one. If you want a sea, you create one. If you want a throne to sit on, you create one. In this space, that whispering that you hear are your thoughts. They are not invasive. They are not harmful. They are part of our landscape. If they are thoughts that are troubling you, invite them to leave. Worry, anxiousness, disappointment, it's okay if it's here. It's a part of us. Invite it to leave. In this space, any power that you need, you can command. It is your place of power. Anyone who you want with you, who fills you, who makes you happiest, any sounds, any items, place them here in this space. Here you do not have to perform or be better. Here you do not have tasks other than those you assign to yourself. In this space, all of your goals are sound. Anything you wish to be is possible. Deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. In this space, if you wish it, you can be connected to every other human in a most positive and unique way. In this space, you are allowed to determine what the next best version of yourself is, and you can meditate on it and begin to construct it, and you can leave it here for whenever you need to return to it. Here, you are as complete and full as you need to be. Deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Don't try to stop those thoughts. Thoughts are energy. They are momentum. You may see that as interrupting your meditation, but they simply want your attention. Give them a moment, and then ask them to sit, or stand beside you, or leave. You have the power to do so. Deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. From this place of power, notice where in your body, in your entire system, where you can see stress, whether it be shoulders, hands, ankles, feet. advise that energy that it has no control over you. Call it forward. Demand that it present itself. Those feelings of doubt that hide and wait, in this space, you are allowed to call them forward. Demand that they present themselves. No need to chastise them or combat them. They have no power here. When you are ready, invite them to leave. Deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. That power you feel growing is very simply your acceptance of yourself, your acceptance of your limitlessness in this space, your acceptance of your balance as a human. Let that feed you. Use your breaths in to grow it. Deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, out through your mouth. Last breath before we leave our space. Deep breath in, out through your mouth. See that evolved version of yourself that you have been building. Embrace it. Tell it that you will see it again. Step back through your door. Close it behind you. On the count of 3. And when you're ready, come back into the room and join us. And 1, and 2, and 3. How was that? You okay? If you fell asleep during the process, that's not a problem. Because you were in a safe space, you understand? When you create a place of power for yourself in meditation, it's perfectly okay if you nod off. Because you're there with people who you love, you're there with concepts that you've created that give you comfort. It's perfectly sound if that happens. Questions? Ma'am? I don't as of yet, but I very well may have to. I very well may have to.
We'll just call your answer machine.
Keep at it. Send me email. If you guys pressure me enough, I promise you I will craft one. Other questions? We good to go? Folks, if there are none, it has been a pleasure. I want to thank you for your time and your attention this afternoon. And as I said, I will see you next year.
And he's also a really great lunch companion as well. So thank you, Napoleon. We needed that. And maybe we'll just all come back tomorrow and do it again. Is that good? Okay, so we're going to have about 15 minutes, and we are going to another part of the museum. It's an adventure for our luncheon with our speaker, Dr. Catherine Meeks, there. And so that's at 12:30, and we will see you there.
Where's there? Oh.